All right, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to AppliedHE Xchange Philippines. I think this is the best beginning of a webinar that we've ever done with a fantastic countdown. For the opening now, we have the Invocation Prayer, the Philippine National Anthem, and the OLFU Legacy video. Go ahead.
Our Lady of Fatima, we come on bended knee to beg your intercession for peace and unity. Dear Mary, won't you show us the right and shining ways? We pledge our love and offer you a rosary each day. We promised at Fatima each time that you appear to help us if we pray to you to banish war and fear. Dear Lady, on first Saturdays we ask your guiding hands for peace and guidance here on earth and protection for our land. Lady of Fatima, we come on bended knee to beg your intercession for peace and unity. Dear Mary, won't you show us the right and shining ways? We pledge our love and offer you a rosary each day. We pledge our love and offer you a rosary each day.
All right, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. And now, without further ado, allow me to invite the president of Our Lady of Fatima University, Dr. Caroline Marian Enriquez, to deliver her welcome remarks. Over to you, Dr. Caroline.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, friends and colleagues. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar organized by AppliedHE Exchange in collaboration with Our Lady of Fatima University. To all the participants, students, faculty, deans, and our speakers, welcome to this webinar on student mobility in a post-COVID world as organized by AppliedHE Exchange. I hope that you're all well rested because our session on higher education engagement, global student mobility, and transnational education will be very interesting and informative. Perhaps you're wondering how this mobility can be possible, how we could do exchange programs, how we could do education engagements across countries. Yes, it's possible, and this session, through our speakers, will give us trends and advice on how networking, transnational education, and cross-border learning can take place in the current and post-COVID situation. Allow me to extend my gratitude to Ms. Mandy Mok, founder and CEO of AppliedHE Singapore, who is a visionary leader. Likewise, my warmest thanks and welcome to Dr. Janet Ilieva, founder and CEO of Education Insight, United Kingdom, and to Mr. Peter Steck, analyst of AppliedHE Singapore, for sharing your insights with us. This is indeed an opportunity to gain a comprehensive overview of current and emerging practices on how to foster and participate in transnational education and student mobility. In our digital world, we have to think beyond confined spaces and how we can learn from each other. I am sure that this session will enlighten our minds that education is really beyond borders. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. Back to you, Mr. Peter.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Caroline. Then allow me to hand over to the CEO and founder of AppliedHE, Ms. Mandy Mok.
Share screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Right. Good afternoon, and welcome to the AppliedHE Launch Exchange for the Philippines. We have been organizing launch events like this one for countries around the world, from Pakistan, Indonesia, and Malaysia, to Kazakhstan and Russia, the MENA region, Middle East and North Africa, and scheduled for next week is Taiwan. The AppliedHE Exchange is an opportunity for us to give you a flavor of what AppliedHE has to offer, and in exchange, to better understand the issues that you are facing in the Philippines. I'm very grateful to our host, Our Lady of Fatima University, OLFU, especially President Caroline Enriquez and Dr. Ignacio Cordova. Both have been very supportive of us. Thank you so much. And also to our guest speaker, the Education Insight founder and director, Dr. Janet Ilieva. And finally, thanks to you, the audience from across the Philippines and beyond. Thank you very much for joining us today. I created and launched AppliedHE in January 2020 after an almost 20-year career at QS, with the aim of creating an alternative solution in ranking, rating, and branding that better serves the need of more learning and employability-focused applied universities, which I believe are dominant in the ASEAN region and in fact all over the world. At the same time, the solutions AppliedHE offers are compatible with other rankings out there. It's not an either or choice. AppliedHE can help you with international branding and marketing, student recruitment, benchmarking, and a range of other solutions. Because AppliedHE is the new kid on the block, we are nimbler, hungrier, and more sensitive to your needs, and ready with a whole suite of exciting and innovative services. At the same time, My team, who are also veterans from QS, and I are very highly experienced in this sector. So we have an unparalleled track record that speaks for itself. So now, without further ado, let me get started. As mentioned, AppliedHE was launched on 1st January of 2020. So we're still very young, just a year old. And now you have an alternative choice from what is currently available in the market. We offer higher education evaluation and branding solutions focused on employability and learning. And our tagline for the company aptly amplifies that: skills and job ready, future proof. Our strength lies in reaching out not only to academics, but also include stakeholders from industry, civil society, government, students, parents, alumni, faculty, etc. Basically, everybody. Here's an outline of my presentation. I will introduce the company, AppliedHE, and all our initiatives, from evaluation tools, that is a set of ratings, the job ready, English ready, and online ready, to building your global reputation with our networking solutions like Future, the world's first networking platform for the higher education sector, to our Xchange webinars and events, and Extra, our e-newsletter. And of course, our special events and special projects, which I will share with you later. All these will help your institution achieve not only global, but also local visibility and branding with all your stakeholders quickly and cost-effectively. AppliedHE is the new brand for all skills-based employment-focused education, and our mission is designed to help universities to communicate with your stakeholders, engage with your international and local peers, industry, and government, and brand your institution worldwide, including improving in the rankings. In the following slides, I'd like to introduce the initiatives of AppliedHE. I've grouped them into 4 segments. Let's start with the evaluation tools first. When we first started the company in January 2020, we only had the job ready rating. Today, I'm pleased to say AppliedHE has 3 rating systems. We have the all-round job ready rating system to evaluate the quality of teaching and learning and employability of your graduates, an English ready rating to evaluate the quality of English language as a medium of instruction in non-English speaking countries, and it is also a great marketing tool for the recruitment of international students. And the online ready rating, which helps your institution benchmark and promote its online programs and courses. The ratings not only serve as benchmarking tools, but they are also effective and affordable marketing tools. The ratings can benchmark your institution's performance for quality improvement, as our criteria are relevant and implementation is relatively quick. It is not just a rating per se, it also provides market intelligence so that you can make informed decisions and strategies without having to go for expensive market consultancies. As a marketing tool, it can quickly communicate to your stakeholders your institution's excellence and quality. The fact that you are affiliated with the AppliedHE brand also shows that you are job and skills ready, future-proof. And basically, the ratings is a great tool to meet your institution's quest for global branding and excellence. So let's start with the AppliedHE Job Ready rating. This rating is so versatile that it can be applied to not only universities, but also suitable for professional institutions. And by professional, we mean the vocational, the TVETs, polytechnics, and colleges. It's also suitable for business schools and online education. The Job Ready rating applies to any skills-based employment-focused tertiary education program where students are prepared for a clearly defined job or occupational pathway. We distinguish ourselves from other generalist higher education as they generally have no clear career pathway. Our ratings is aimed at evaluating professional education such as engineering, nursing, medicine, law, accounting, art and design, media. Basically, any program that involves industry collaboration will fall under our new brand, AppliedHE Job Ready rating, regardless of whether it is for universities, online education, professional institutions, and business schools. Here's the new perspective, the creative twist. We do not do a rating of your institution per se. We rate your institution based on your programs by employment cluster. And the employment cluster is adapted from the International Standard Industrial Classification. This means we can now bring a spotlight to your every program, big or small. And currently, there is no marketing tool in the market to help you achieve this. Take, for example, the employment cluster healthcare. The mainstream subjects that fall under healthcare are your medicine, dentistry, nursing, etc. But what about the smaller ones like radiology, physiotherapy, and even hospital administration, etc.? Now with the AppliedHE Job Ready Ratings methodology, we can bring the global spotlight to your every program, whether it's big or small. There are 22 employment clusters from the International Standard Industrial Classification, and it covers all sectors of the economy. And this list is growing daily because the world is changing so fast that there are many jobs out there today that never existed in the past. Jobs like these: e-commerce, gaming, coding, social media marketing, influencer, blogger, just to name a few. And these are not even proper words in the past, but today they are reputable and very much sought after jobs. And our unique approach to rating by employment clusters can accommodate these new jobs and the future economy. You will note that many of our criteria overlaps with the goals of the SDG. The AppliedHE Job Ready Rating is done primarily by surveys to your stakeholders like your students, faculty, employers, and alumni. So what this means is you will have access to market intelligence of your key stakeholders, and these information are very relevant to your strategies, future plans, internal decision-making, KPIs, etc. And it is market intelligence that you do not have to pay a hefty sum for, as it comes as part of the ratings. This is all part of our effort to help you stretch your budget as much as possible. Once rated, you will be presented with the AppliedHE Job Ready Ratings badge, and you can use it on all your marketing materials. The ratings are awarded by an employment cluster, and the country of origin is clearly stated so that stakeholders are clear on the market that you serve. Now, this is very important as employment and jobs differ in each country. Institutions can score from 1 to 5 job ready, with 5 representing the best institutions, and the rating badges are valid for 3 years. You will also receive a certificate listing the score in all the evaluated programs. So this means even your smallest program will be able to share the global limelight. And you can use the AppliedHE Job Ready Rating certificate in all your marketing materials as well. The ratings will help to associate your institution with quality of teaching and learning and employability of your graduates. I will skip the English Ready rating as you all speak English in the Philippines, so this product is rather irrelevant here. Let's move on to the AppliedHE Online Ready rating. Online education, which used to be a virgin space in terms of regulation and often seen as second best, and for those needing a second chance, has shed its negative image because of the current COVID situation. In today's environment, online degrees are an increasingly appealing alternative to traditional on-campus programs. COVID has brought the future forward. Everyone is going online these days, including us. Why an online ready rating? As you all know, online education has grown exponentially since the start of the pandemic. And it seems virtual is going to stay. And even if things go back to normal, it won't be the normal that we know, but the new normal, which is why we need to be ahead of the curve now, as there is a huge demand for online courses. The future is going to be a hybrid mix of online and physical attendance, and the earlier we're ready for it, the better. The benefits of being online ready rated are manifold. First, it enables your institution to have a global benchmark and understand better how others' online programs are performing. It is also a great marketing and branding tool to attract not only domestic, but also international students and demonstrate your institution's online-ready learning to a global audience. And with this rating, you can understand your stakeholders' perceptions of the different aspects of online learning so that you can create relevant strategies to meet their needs. So now we come to the second group of initiatives, and that is our strategies for global reputation and networking. We recently launched Future in January. Future is the world's first professional networking platform for the higher education sector. We also have physical and virtual events under the brand of Xchange, and we have an e-news wire called Extra Extra, now indexed by Google News. We're confident the 3 initiatives will increase your global and local reputation and network very quickly. You can share your institution's news and content by submitting stories to Extra Extra. You can speak at our exchange events, both virtual and physical. And you can contribute articles and interact with your students, peers, alumni, industry on future. And at the same time, develop global partnerships and increase your network. You can also participate in sponsorships to increase the awareness and attention of your institution and to be seen as a leader. So Future was launched on the 20th of January of this year. It is the world's first professional networking platform designed for the higher education sector. And Future aims to connect everyone, from high school to professional career to lifelong learning for the 3 E's: education, employment, and everything in between. These are the most important career milestones in life, from the moment you are a high school student to being a student in higher education to being a successful graduate, employer, entrepreneur, or even an alumni donor. And all these stakeholders will be centered around institutions and industries and the 22 employment clusters that I introduced earlier for the job ready ratings. There is nothing like this on the market, so we are in a very blue ocean indeed. Future is designed for higher education leaders, students, alumni, and employers who want to stay informed about the latest developments in the higher education sector. Besides the usual social media activities, you can also use Future as a teaching aid, and we will be introducing a new feature to help you with alumni engagement and management, something many Asian universities are still not very strong in, and I will speak more about this service in the next slide. In the pipeline are also services for student recruitment, internships, research collaboration, and lifelong learning. In short, eventually, AppliedHE Future will include the entire higher education and career experience from leaving high school all the way to retirement. So please sign up for Future and encourage your friends and peers to sign up too. It is free and it is the only professional networking platform you'll ever need. The new feature I want to touch on in Future is the Alumni Engagement and Management Service. Institutions of higher learning in many parts of the world have long underestimated the value of their alumni network. And we all know that investing in alumni relations can provide a high return on investment for an institution. For example, alumni can act as recruiters for the institution. They can help open doors to employers and industry partnerships. And they can share their industry knowledge, act as mentors, become students of lifelong learning programs, and they can be even tapped on as donors for new projects. A strong alumni engagement strategy is not built overnight, but fortunately, AppliedHE can help your institution get started. As you can see from my slide here, there is a whole host of stuff we can help you with your alumni engagement and management. And you can even design your page to reflect your institution's branding, like NTU here. You can read all the text later as the slides will be provided to you after this webinar. I just want to draw your attention to 2 points in bold, and that is Future is globally accessible and Facebook is not accessible in China. And the second point is this is a free service, so please do take advantage of it. Another strategy for global branding is, of course, our physical events, but they need to be on hold now. To give you a quick introduction of our physical events, which also go by the brand Xchange. We have Xchange events by employment cluster, for example, Xchange Healthcare or Xchange IT. Or if you want to drill down to a specific subject, you can host an exchange by subject, example, Xchange Nursing or Xchange Dentistry. Or you can host an exchange by region, example, Xchange Asia or Xchange Middle East. And you can even focus on a specific country, like Xchange Philippines or Xchange Japan. These events are an effective strategy for global branding and networking, and by God's will, we hope to resume in 2022. The pandemic hit last year, and there was just no way we can travel for our physical events. So instead of moping around and feeling sorry for ourselves, we started a series of Squaring the Circle debate webinars. It was fun, it was provocative, it was very refreshing. And I believe we were the most active in the online space at that time, as we were organizing a webinar every other week from the month of June to the end of the year. And we are continuing this into this year with one webinar every month instead of every other week, as we do not want you to complain of webinar fatigue. Another regular webinar that is alternating with Squaring the Circle debate is the Fireside Chat. So for the rest of this year, we will have a webinar every first Wednesday of the month with Fireside Chat and Squaring the Circle debate alternating every other month all the way to December of 2021. Always on a Wednesday evening, always at 8 p.m. Singapore time. So do keep your monthly first Wednesday nights free. In addition to the regular monthly webinars, we also organize bespoke webinars according to clients' topic of interest. So do check with us if you would like us to organize a webinar with your preferred theme. And we have our e-newsletter, Extra. Again, unique to AppliedHE. Here, we will help you to promote your institutional news on the global stage, and this is yet another complimentary service from us. All you have to do is send us your news that are extraordinary, and we will publish and promote it to your targeted global audience. In the short space of time since our launch, we're now indexed by Google News, so this means our readership is growing rapidly. Therefore, this is a great and targeted medium to showcase stories from your institution to the world. For institutions that submit news, your stories will reach a much wider audience, and for the readers, it will enable them to receive all the latest news from their favorite news sources in one place. Special events is under our third group of initiatives. The bite-sized online internship is under our special events. We're currently running a pilot with it now. This new initiative is the first of its kind, and the following 3 slides will show you the benefits from the 3 groups of stakeholders involved, and they are your students, your university, and the employers. For students, aside from being able to learn, share ideas and knowledge, they will have the opportunity to build a global network while still in school. They will also build valuable employability skills and connect with several potential employers or industries before deciding on what they really want as a career. Plus, they will have the opportunity to market themselves to prospective employers for permanent employment. For institutions, they will enhance the students' uni experience with this entrepreneurship experience. Institutions will be able to expose their students to an international online environment and connect them to prospective international employers. And for sure, it will definitely enhance and improve university industry experience. This bite-sized online internship is a very innovative approach to student internships, and it will highlight the university's leadership to its internal and external stakeholders. For employers, they will have global access to a diverse talent pool of top talent and original ideas. Employers will also have the opportunity to develop relationships with innovative university partners and the opportunity to brand themselves to this group of prospective and potential employees. So you can see this new service is innovative and creative and will definitely bring internships to a new level. Special projects is our 4th group of initiatives, and they're namely rankings. January was a busy month for us. In addition to launching Future, we've also launched the Rankometer, a new ranking that is based on one single and transparent benchmark. Now, there has been a huge proliferation of university rankings in recent years. Students, parents, and even employers simply don't know where to look for a reliable comparison of universities. With the Rankometer, we'll solve that problem by providing a transparent and reliable measure of university quality. What is a Rankometer? To be precise, the Rankometer is a composite ranking of the world's 5 most influential world university rankings. So with the launch of the Rankometer, we had good media coverage. And what this means is it adds credibility to the new kit, which is AppliedHE, as we've had many inquiries after. So this means if you're associated with the AppliedHE brand, your branding and global visibility will be greatly enhanced too. And with the recent success and excitement from the launch of the Rankometer, plans to launch more important and relevant rankings are in the pipeline. We're currently looking at launching the ASEAN Private University Ranking and the Middle East Private University Ranking. Another very unique ranking to look out for is the preferred rankings. What are the preferred rankings? The preferred rankings are a pair of national rankings of the country's most desirable employers and educational institutions. This rankings exercise is designed to stimulate collaboration between the academic and business community to help bridge the national skills gap. By having twin national rankings of universities and employers, it will enable collaboration and competition between the two entities so as to attract and nurture the nation's best talent, taking employability to the next level. This is a complimentary service. Rules and conditions apply, of course, so please contact us if you want more information. This is my last slide, and I would like to leave you with a list of the first of its kind from AppliedHE. So we have Future, the world's first professional networking platform for the higher education sector. We have the Alumni Engagement and Management Service and the bite-sized online internship. And for rankings, we have AppliedHE preferred rankings for both local universities and employers, the ASEAN Private University Rankings, and the Middle East Private University Ranking. So I hope you are as excited as we are creating all these new and innovative strategies for you. Please write to us if you have more questions or would like more information or even demos. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mandy. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Janet Ilieva, the founder and director of Education Insight UK. Go ahead, Janet.
Good morning, everyone. It's a real delight to join this webinar in the Philippines. The Philippines is a place very close to my heart that I have visited on many occasions. And I'm truly delighted to be virtually with here today. And hopefully, it won't be too long before visiting in person. What I will try to do, but I'm not sure I should be able to do it actually, is share my screen and take you through some slides that present my thoughts on the state of international student recruitment globally. And let me see if I can do that. Now, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it. It's all working. Perfect.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent. Oh, isn't it wonderful when technology works, especially in a webinar? Oopsie, sorry about that. The brief overview of today's talk is really looking at where we were globally with regard to student movement pre-COVID, how COVID is impacting the global mobility of students, and what is likely to happen in the period that will follow post-COVID, but to also consider what are the implications for East Asia and the Pacific. And while it's not in my slides, I'll be delighted to explore and take questions about how can the Philippines benefit from what is currently happening globally. The global march of students has been on the rise, looking at 2.5 million students in 2004, almost tripling that to almost 7 million students by 2030. These are predictions from the OECD, and the same organization in their latest Education at a Glance report also showed exactly how is the student international body distributed across the world. And while there has been a significant increase in the number of globally mobile students, I think what is quite evident on that chart is the widening of the number of students going to non-OECD study destinations. So exactly what does that mean? And this is a snapshot which basically looks at the growth that has been witnessed in the proportion of students going to non-OECD countries. This has grown by from 23% in 1998 to 30% in 2018. And basically what it means is whilst there has been a significant growth in the globally mobile students, this growth was significantly higher across the non-OECD destination countries. Looking at the regions, I have focused on the major 3 regions that have seen significant changes in their global share of globally mobile students. So, of course, the alliance share goes to North America and Western Europe. However, in 1998, 64%, as almost 2/3 of the globally mobile students were studying in Western Europe and North America. However, this has significantly changed over the years, and what we're seeing is growth in students going to East Asia and the Pacific, and the market share of the region grew from 14% in 1998 to 21% in 2018. A little bit of a modest growth in terms of market share went to Central and Eastern Europe. However, the growth is present. So the share of Central and Eastern Europe grew from 7 to 12% over the space of 20 years. That's between 1998 and 2018. But if we can just bring kind of an inflection point here is 2007 to 2009. We know that is the global financial crisis, and what we're seeing over that space is a dip in the market share of Western Europe and North America. This is from 60% down to 56 and 55 in 2010. However, there has been a significant jump in the market share of East Asia and the Pacific and Central and Eastern Europe, which basically means that when something on a global scale takes place, there is a redistribution of the globally mobile flows of students. So I suspect what might have taken place at that time is a significant increase in regional mobility. And what I'll do here, hope it works, is just a visual of what I've been saying. This chart represents the inbound mobility rate globally. So what is the inbound mobility rate? This proportion, which is tracked by the UNESCO Institute of Statistics, shows the concentration of international students in any country. Statistically speaking, it shows the proportion of international students out of the total tertiary enrollments in the countries that UNESCO collects data for. And if I play that slide, you will see the highest concentration is, of course, in Western Europe. And as we go through the years, there is a significant increase in these proportions in the Gulf states. This is mainly the UAE, but also Malaysia and Singapore are also growing their bubble as such. And whilst we know that the country that hosts most of the international students globally is the USA, the proportion of students is actually quite small. It's about 5% compared to other places globally where the proportions of students are significantly greater. Europe does stand out on this map. You can tell from the bubbles of the circles that European countries do host a big number of globally mobile students. However, what is quite peculiar about the region is a significant high level of degree recognition and credit transfers. Through the Bologna process, the higher education systems in the country harmonized. And it means there is a very strong progression and a recognition of prior learning across the region, which means students can continue from undergraduate into postgraduate education from country to country. Some students commute simply because through the European Union border arrangements, students can actually commute on a weekly basis between Belgium and Germany, or between neighboring countries, depending on exactly is their choice of study. So what I am trying to highlight here is the power of synchronized and fairly harmonized higher education system. And this is something that we're starting to see happening in ASEAN. And give it a few years or a decade, what is likely to happen is significantly greater intra-regional mobility. Students moving across borders from one country, but a neighboring country to study elsewhere. And this is an area where I think Philippines offers a great potential. It's an English-speaking destination, fantastic level of English. It is the language of instruction in many higher education institutions. And as such, I can see the appeal of the country growing over the years to come. If we look at what has happened at the globally mobile proportion, so these proportions here that we have on the screen basically shows the percentage of students that go to study abroad expressed as a proportion of the domestic tertiary enrollments. So over the space that UNESCO has collected data, this proportion has been fairly stable at around 2%. However, what is quite exciting over the past 3 years is that these 2% have actually now increased to 2.5%. So for something as stable as 2% of globally mobile students over the space of 2 decades, that's quite an exciting growth. And what I think, if we start delving into the data and see exactly what's driving it, we'll probably see a growing number of students choosing to study in another country which is close to their home. So I'm going back to my point about a intra-regional mobility, or this movement of students that is happening within a fairly close proximity to their country of origin. I did mention Europe as a good example. However, what is useful to bear in mind is that 84% of students from Europe who study in another country study in Europe. So 84% of the mobile students in Europe basically study in a neighboring country or in a country within their region. And this is what a harmonized higher education system does. So we're likely to see a significant expansion of disproportions in ASEAN, I think, but we are also likely to see a growing number of students opting to study in a neighboring country rather than leave the continent and study elsewhere. What I will do in the next few slides is study the impact of COVID and how this is likely to impact the international student recruitment ecosystem. It is fair to bear in mind that there are push and pull factors at play which significantly impact student demand globally. However, what I'm also seeing happening a lot is students get caught up in political discourse and countries' domestic agendas, and as such countries' immigration systems, but also post-study work opportunities, they are part of the student decision-making consideration. They're part of the student package. The whole offer of study and work are interlinked. And as Mandy mentioned earlier in her presentation, internationally mobile students, they're very much employment driven. They want to get jobs upon graduation, jobs that would give them an edge over the students that had possibly chosen to study at home. But in addition to that mix of student decision-making factors, we are also seeing additional factors at play, such as the country's handling of the pandemic, the state of the vaccination programs. Does the country have an open borders? So these are also becoming or adding to the complexity of the student decision-making process. Unfortunately, what is also at play is geopolitical tensions between China. At the moment, there is quite tense relations, shall I put it mildly, between study destinations, recruiting students, and basically the tensions that they have with China. And this is impacting students. Students always get caught in the middle between when countries have geopolitical issues. And the pandemic, what has also put a spotlight on is sustainable development. I think that this has been one of the silver linings during the pandemic. Conferences like this one has basically given a much broader access to policy dialogues and discussions. Costs associated with travel, with cost of living, with acquiring visa to attend an event, this has all been dropped because in a virtual environment, we all have equal access to events. And I think this fora has actually given power and focus to voices from the global south that were not necessarily heard in the same way that they have been heard now. But the whole sustainable development agenda has given countries much greater focus and much greater weight in the conversations that are taking place now. So the sustainability agenda is one aspect of what we're seeing now, but also I think the travel restrictions and closed borders also meant much less air travel. So the environmental issues were really brought on the agenda. And we know that this is one of the major discussion items at the G7 summit, which is taking place in the UK. In response to all that, a student survey carried out by the Times Higher Education shows prospective students are now increasingly considering universities' engagement with the Sustainable Development Goals, but also the environmental impact. So when we think about globally mobile students, it's possibly also useful to bear in mind a globally minded consciousness. And the students, potential students do care about the environment, they do care about what is happening elsewhere. And the university being able to evidence their engagement with the Sustainable Development Agenda is a significant factor of the student decision-making process. I have picked up a few slides from a recent agent survey, which was carried out by Navitas. And you can see the actual link of the survey down at the source where this chart is coming from. So basically, I did mention there are significant shifts. It's a very fluid space at the moment. Where are the students finally going to go? And they're changing their mind all the time. I think what is really interesting at the moment is the students are applying to more universities compared to last year and the years before. But not just that they're applying to more institutions, they're applying to universities in more than one country. Depending on who you speak to, but on average, students are considering universities in at least roughly two countries. And they're doing that because they want to keep their options open. Come nearer the time, it means that at least it gives them the flexibility of changing their mind which country they want to go and study. And this is the chart shows what are the latest shifts in terms of student interest. So what we're seeing is fairly positive development for universities in the UK and Canada. But what we are also seeing is a significant decline in desirability of institutions in Australia and New Zealand. This has a significant impact for students from ASEAN because East Asia and ASEAN are the key source countries for students considering Australia and New Zealand as their study choice. So given that significant drop, it will be really interesting to see where are these students going to go. It's also quite positive to see that Singapore is actually quite high up on the agenda there. And related to that, there is a follow-up question in the agent survey that is also asking students about which countries they think they'll be able to go and study in. And we can see that it's a very strong correlation between countries that fare well in terms of desirable study destinations and those that the students perceive that they will be open for business, or that they will be open for travel. And UK, Canada and Singapore are right on the top of the country study there. I don't think Navitas has considered these are the most common destination countries where agents that Navitas works with send students to. But I'm sure that if we delve into intra-regional mobility within ASEAN, there will be a significant movement there. This is a chart that I picked up yesterday. There was a fantastic webinar organized by professionals in international education, which is UK-based news agency. However, they've got a global reach. So the webinar focused on recruitment 4.0, and it was with several of the so-called agent aggregators. It was a fascinating discussion, but I think what the channel represents is changes, rapidly changing student recruitment funnel, and how exactly, if we look at the top of the funnel, so these are the university leavers, they leave, school leavers, and this is the point at which students seek advice to study abroad. So right at the top of the funnel, we've got advice to school leavers, and then it goes down to various institutions, course searches. This is hot courses provided by IDP, study portals, which is again another significant information provider. And then going down the funnel, it narrows down because it's less students that are considering or dropping down through the funnel. But however, the engagement between the respective providers and the students grows. So we're entering the space of the agent ecosystem. What we have here in that space is also the big aggregators. And we're talking about significant platforms like AppliedBoard, Adventus, Educo, and similar, mainly equity companies based platforms that provide student advice. They engage with the so-called recruitment partners and respectively try to place students. So it's again quite interesting to see that we can see that QS featuring kind of quite high up in the funnel, but also right at the bottom when the actual enrollment placement takes place. So it's a very dynamic market space. It is changing, and there are new players arriving in that space and occupying a different niche. But again, being very clear about the student journey and exactly what it entails would possibly prompt exactly which part of this recruitment funnel you're likely to engage with. If we're to look at international student demand post-COVID, I think what is quite clear is that some of the trends that were in the making pre-COVID, such as growth in regional mobility, is likely to accelerate. ASEAN is a hotspot. We're seeing that significant growth in student mobility towards ASEAN has been increasing pre-COVID. What is likely to happen post-COVID? I think we're likely to see a further acceleration. COVID has impacted students' ability to travel overseas. It has pressed major challenges on everybody involved. However, what it also means is that we're likely, or we're already going through a COVID-induced recession. The impact of a recession on students and their families is paramount, and it means a growing hardship, but it also means much less disposable income. This is likely to result in students increasingly considering cost-effective study destinations, and I think it's the recession that is likely to trigger significant expansion in intra-regional mobility. If we look back at what happened during the East Asia currency crisis, so I'm talking about the late 90s, study destination or sending countries that were popular with UK, US, and Australia, such as Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Indonesia, to a limited degree, China, very limited degree, China. What it meant was that these countries, or students from those countries, reconsidered their study choices. And there was a significant reductions in the number of students going to study out of East Asia, and a significant growth in the number of students that chose to study within their own region. It also meant an expansion of the domestic regulatory environment that supports private education provision, but also transnational education. I think TNE is, I have not spoken enough about transnational education, but there are some excellent growth prospects for greater transnational education engagement on the back of COVID, because it gives flexibility about the ways of travel. If students can travel, then universities' degree programs can travel. They can be provided remotely, they can be provided online. Institutions can travel, they can open up a joint institutes or operations in another country. It means that the universities are equipped with the means to deploy or to switch from student mobility to other types of mobility, such as mobility of academic programs, or mobility of institution, or mobility of academics. And I think being mindful of everything that you've got at your disposal is really important, because it gives you the flexibility to respond to changes in the external environment. So, I mean, this is kind of a small analysis of what a COVID-induced recession might mean for the ASEAN region. Growing environmental consciousness, I think, is another significant factor that will impact students' decision-making. They may decide that air travel to a faraway country several times a year is too much of a carbon footprint for them to have their consciousness to agree with. And as such, I think that is another kind of more carbon neutral or carbon friendly consideration that is likely to increase the appeal of regional mobility or studying a little bit nearer to home. Mandy mentioned in her presentation the pivot towards online education delivery and blended delivery. I think that the classroom mode of teaching, students are really keen to continue to engage in such way. However, we're past that point. Online education and blended learning are likely to dominate, or to have much greater prominence in terms of higher education teaching and higher education delivery. We have seen that most of the countries globally switch their education provision towards online at some point over the past 15 months. I think it is also fair to say that there have been huge investments made in education technology, and these huge investments were made on behalf of governments, on behalf of institutions. Students invest in those, and families. And as such, everybody, what makes sense here is to build on these investments and deploy them in future use. I don't think the infrastructures built in the response to COVID will be dismantled overnight. I think as a result of that, we're likely to see national frameworks for recognition of education and learning becoming much more flexible to recognize online learning. Vietnam is one of the good examples in the region that had big issues in terms of recognizing online education. However, they had to adapt the approach over the space of the COVID pandemic and become more flexible in the recognition of online delivery models. And I think that will become the standard across countries where online was not recognized previously. But yes, countries' regulatory frameworks with regard to the recognition of transnational education, and particularly in terms of online and blended learning, are likely to become much more accommodating. And I think in summary of what has been said so far, what it means for ASEAN and for the Philippines is significantly improved prospects for regional mobility. Philippines is priority study destination for those students that want to improve their English language. An additional pool would mean that students may decide to stay for their higher education degree or a different qualification. As such, improvements in the regulatory environments around recognition of prior learning, but also education delivery, such as through transnational education, for instance, are likely to result in additional boost for regional mobility, where students may decide to do a qualification with a Philippine institution, which is jointly delivered by, let's say, the Filipino institution and a Western university. This means benefits from basically a degree which is recognized in more than one country, but also labor market recognition in terms of degrees. It means that the students would have the options to work and to have the degrees recognized by employers in more than one country. So it's a silver lining of the pandemic, but I think the prospects are very positive. Given my time slot, I think I might have slightly overrun here, and I apologize for that, but happy to take any questions should you have any. Thank you very much for listening. And
Thank you so much, Janet, for that wonderful presentation. So yes, please put your comments or your questions in the Q&A. And then after my presentation, we have time for Q&A. If you're on the panel, you can raise your hand. And you can also make a verbal comment. So yeah, if that's something you'd like to do, maybe you want to prepare. I'm sorry we can't give everybody the chance to make a verbal comment because we have a very, very full house. Yes, so please put those questions in the Q&A. And also, if you need a certificate of attendance, please email info@appliedhe.com after this event. All right, with all that housekeeping out of the way, allow me to share. Let's hope I am as lucky as Janet was, that everything worked. And so that seems to be the case. All right, I assume you can all see my slides. So I today will talk about the AppliedHE rating system. And I'll talk about two of our ratings, the Job Ready rating system and the Online Ready rating system. And maybe it's good to briefly connect a bit to Janet's talk. I mean, one of the things she mentioned is online is a growth area. And to be very honest, about a year ago, we were not thinking of an online ready rating. But due to very strong client demand and people seeing that, yes, online, really, the time has come for online. This is not another false start. We've now rolled out this product and we're doing a pilot with a US institution as we speak. And then for the Job Ready rating system, Janet mentioned how in Europe there's a lot of harmonization of recognition of degrees, etc. There's the Bologna process. And I think if you look at the ASEAN region, the harmonization hasn't always come from the public sector. It's often been governments who have been following what the private sector has been doing. So we've got ASEAN regional brands like Shopee or AirAsia, which are connecting the region. And in this sense, we also hope that AppliedHE can play a role there in providing that kind of knowledge infrastructure to make it happen. So today I will talk about the job ready rating and the online ready rating. The English ready rating is for institutions that teach in English outside of an English speaking country. So that wouldn't apply as much to the Philippines because you guys are all really good in English. So starting with the, oh, I'm missing a slide here, with the online, sorry, the job ready rating, we created a rating that we wanted to be relevant to different stakeholders, parsimonious, and non-prescriptive, and focus on the fundamentals that are really important. Now, when we developed our rating, two themes kind of kept running through. The first one was Industrial Revolution 4.0, and the second one, the Sustainable Development Goals, which Janet mentioned. And both of those, are also in our rating system. Although it wasn't really the intention to design it that way, it happened in that way. So the AppliedHE rating system, Job Ready, has three, or depending on how you look at it, 4 rating variants. Very important, there's a professional rating variant and a universities rating variant, and also an online one. Now, the professional rating variant is intended for institutions that do not see research as part of their mission. And very often this is a struggle of ASEAN institutions. They are very, very good institutions, but they're very focused on online learning, and they're very focused on learning, and they're very focused on employability. So research is not a big component, and that means that they often lose out in various rating systems, which tend to focus a lot on ratings. A lot of research, sorry. So the AppliedHE Job Ready rating has 22 employment clusters, ranging from agricultural and fisheries to media and entertainment to transportation. And the reason that we segregate the rating is because we understand that institutions can be good or not as good in different fields, and also that students or parents or employers, they start with the industry and then they start looking at the institution. So it's also a communication strategy. And because there can be such big differences between fields, we feel it's not fair to compare these things. If it's not possible to, just to key in questions into the Q&A, for whatever reason, please leave them here in the chat. I'm so sorry if that's an issue. Now, what is the requirement to be job ready rated? So we're not an accreditor, let that be very clear. So we look for institutions that are locally accredited. I think that's basically everybody represented here. It needs to be a post-secondary institution. The program needs to offer a clear career path, because we also look at employer perception, and it needs to have a minimum of 200 students enrolled. Now, that need not be in a single degree program. That can also be for multiple degree programs in the same employment cluster. The criteria that we look at for the job ready rating are outcomes and delivery, as well as the institution. Now, if you look at UNESCO or OECD or ILO best practices on evaluating more skills-based education, you always come back to outcomes and delivery. So we follow these principles. But then under that, we also try to measure the quality of the institution, because we think that you can't have fantastic outcomes and delivery without a very solid institution. Now, the outcomes, we look at graduate reputation, employability, remuneration, and advancement in entrepreneurship. So you can see research doesn't feature here. Really, the practical things that we believe governments and also students and their parents at the end of the day care most about, right? Am I going to get a job, and will I earn a good income? Now, how do we measure this? So for graduate reputation, we run a survey on employers. We actually run 5 surveys. I'll get into that in a second. And something like graduate reputation is relevant to this whole Industrial Revolution 4.0, right? Do employers think the graduates an institution is producing are future ready? And it's also relevant to the Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is about quality of education. The kind of questions that we ask, they are about the technical and subject knowledge that people have, problem-solving skills, etc. And these questions are based on what employers have said in research in the past is what they value. And then we assign some points. So employability, we look at the 6-month post-graduation employment rate, which is a very common measure, and also employer demand for graduates. For remuneration, we look at graduate starting income and 5-year post-graduation income, and we normalize that based on national wages, because we understand that income levels also within ASEAN are completely different, whether it's the Philippines or Singapore or Malaysia. We look at affordability. Is the course affordable? And we look at satisfaction with work-life balance, whether alumni are happy where they ended up. Then for career advancement and entrepreneurship, we look at graduate career advancement potential, career outlook, career and lifelong learning support from the institution, and also entrepreneurial action and intent. And we get that from the various surveys that we run. Now, moving on to delivery, we look at teaching and learning, which of course is a very standard criterion. We look at faculty quality, where we take a slightly different approach. We look at student industry exposure, and we look at intercultural competence or international exposure, and I'll explain that in a little while. Teaching and learning, the first 3 questions I think you will find in any kind of national student survey. So student satisfaction with teaching and learning, with facilities, learning resources, and also the campus environment. And then we look at completion rates and also at faculty perception of teaching and learning. Now, the reason, it's maybe useful to mention why we include faculty perception is that in our pilots, we found that a lot of faculty are quite open about whether the institution is good or bad. They don't always follow what management tells them to respond in these surveys. So we do really value faculty opinions in our surveys. Now, for faculty quality, we look at faculty holding a teaching qualification. So we don't say a PhD is mandatory for teaching, because we think in many contexts, it is not the best qualification to prepare somebody. Faculty industry experience, the second indicator, can be far more relevant, especially if you're preparing a student for work in industry at the end of the day. We also look at faculty satisfaction with working conditions. Happy faculty, we believe, means good faculty in most instances. We look at the retention rate because it's a nice proxy to see how an institution is doing. It's mainly if there's something wrong with retention rate, if faculty are there for life, or if faculty change every 2-3 years, then there's something amiss. And so that's why we choose that proxy. And finally, we look at the faculty's outside industry appointments, consultancy, or professional association board memberships. We think a faculty at an institution should be well connected to the community, to society, know what's going on there. Now, a bit of background perhaps is that we've noticed in some countries there's a real push to hire PhDs as faculty. And in principle, there's nothing wrong with that. But it is a problem if you are an institution that's focused on local industry and the PhDs that you're hiring have absolutely no experience, no knowledge about local industry. Then you see a disconnect starting to arise. And some institutions say, well, we have no choice. We need to do it because this is what the rankings tell us. So we want to offer an alternative rating that is more fitting with what we believe the mission is of most institutions out there. We look at industry exposure. Now, for industry exposure, we had a long debate about this. Should you have a minimum time? How do you evaluate it? Now, at the end of the day, we decided that if employers, if students, if faculty are happy with the industry exposure, it must be good. So we have this kind of 3-way evaluation. And then we also look at student guidance. And that's how we give a score there for student industry exposure, which is, of course, tremendously important if you're going to send students into the workforce in a few months' time. Now, for intercultural competence, this is actually our preferred indicator. We've noted, especially for institutions that have a more vocational or practical focus, they have great difficulty recruiting international students. In fact, they are sometimes banned from recruiting international students because of government funding. So saying that internationalization is the only way that you can achieve goals related to intercultural competence is wrong. And as Janet also mentioned, the growth of what you call a transnational education, online education. Students might not move outside of their country, but they might train and develop many of the competences that we all think are very desirable. Now, there's also a huge intercultural competence literature. So we look at interpersonal skills, teamwork, intercultural tolerance, empathy, etc., to see to what extent that has been cultivated in the student body, because it doesn't necessarily come from international experience in the kind of physical mobility sense. We also still have a measure, an alternative measure for international exposure. At this time, institutions get evaluated based on both. Wherever you get most points, that's the one we use. But I think, given how pilots are going, we will look more at an intercultural competence evaluation framework. Also given the whole COVID experience and issues with student mobility. Now, if we focus on the institution, we see that there is a difference. So up to here, outcomes and delivery, whether you're a research-intensive university, a local community college, polytechnic, or something in between, we've been evaluating you on the same standards. Now, if we look at the institution, we make a difference, and that difference is essentially applied research. If you are evaluated as a university or a business school, we look at applied research, not just research in general, but applied research. And if you are a professional institution, you choose not to be evaluated because it may not be part of your mission, or it's just not a priority. So then who are we to evaluate you on it? We look at institutional reputation, and we look at the employer perception, the referee faculty perception, and the alumni perception. And I think it's very important to make a clear distinction here. We measure this perception based on your local stakeholders, your local employers, your local faculty at other institutions, your local alumni. So it's not an international reputation survey, it's a local reputation survey. So it has a very different focus from some of the other reputation surveys that are out there. And of course, it has different outcomes too. We basically ask local employers, is this institution relevant to what you're doing? Yes or no? We look at inclusiveness and accessibility. And yeah, we've had a long discussion again about how you measure this. We look at gender balance, for instance, where we look at the minority gender. So in a field that might be dominated by women, such as nursing, perhaps, we look for a minimum number of male students and faculty members to have that diversity. If we look at facilities for perhaps differently abled or pregnant nursing students, we also look at the acceptance among the student and faculty body, because that can be very important too. And for the rest, various perceptions of safety, faculty perceptions of governance and inclusiveness, all important things. Now, for applied research, first of all, it's not a very big percentage of this rating. Second of all, we look at faculty research and professional activity during the past 3 years, and we have a very long list of what qualifies. So yes, we look at Scopus Index journals or equivalent, but for instance, if you're in the arts field, we look at exhibitions that you've organized, and newspaper contributions that you've made, manuals that you may have contributed to, basically anything that shows that you're involved in applied research and translating knowledge to practical situations. All of those count in our rating system. And the other thing is we look at how many faculty members make this minimum. So if 2 of your faculty members produce a huge pile of research and the rest produces nothing, you score very low in this. But if every faculty member has some form of involvement, then you score higher. That is what we're trying to measure. We look at the employer perception of institutional expertise, what is their experience, and also the ease of this industry outreach. And finally, we look at community engagement, and we've got a few of those. And mainly we look at students' awareness of various things, such as environmental outreach and social outreach. Often institutions claim they have them, but we say if students are not aware, then the meaning perhaps has gone lost. Now, we also have qualitative information. Because we do this whole survey, which takes about 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the stakeholder, we gather a lot of information about the employer profile, the salary ranges, work-life balance, student background, their motivation, their career goals, also affordability issues. And we also give you that information in the report that we produce. So it's not just a grade that you get. Then for data collection, we look at various surveys. So we do online surveys of students, faculty, referee faculty, that's faculty at other institutions, employers, alumni, and then a bit of institutional data. Now, because of that, if you go to the middle of this thing, you have a lot of different views that kind of interpolate. So if they all come together, they all agree that, okay, this internship is being done really well, or the value to alumni is high, or whatnot. Because we approach it from so many different viewpoints, we feel it's a very solid evaluation tool. Also keep in mind that we have ways to detect survey fraud. We've already had a difficult discussion with one institution about this. We have a very solid process there. What does a survey look like? I'm just going to show you one. First of all, we collect personal information. The way in which we do that is compliant with privacy rules, but we need to know who is completing the survey, if they are a real person, and where they fit in the institution. Are they, in which department are they, what program are they doing? Then we ask them some questions that are relevant for the rating. So evaluation of teaching and learning, intercultural competence, future outlook, and finally we ask them some permissions and possibly additional questions. That's something that we can do. We can also link our survey through to a survey that you may be running to increase the survey responses. Now, all surveys basically work the same. And we collect some institutional data. So we want to know something about the students there, the faculty there, mainly the numbers, and some other information. If you don't have that information, we get it from the surveys. Now, the survey is usually distributed via a link because institutions are not by law allowed to pass us email addresses. So we create a link for you, appliedhe.org/the name of your university. And you can then distribute that. Now, we found that especially mobile responses are very high. So students and faculty complete this a lot on their mobile phones. And our survey platform is very mobile friendly. So that's been very good so far. Our minimum response rates are based on these kind of statistical rules. So we can give you, if you tell us how many students you are, we give you a target, and then we work together to reach that target. That's how it works. So far, all institutions have been able to reach our target. The rating timeline, I think we're one of the fastest raters in the market. We do a coordination meeting with you. Then we have the survey period. This part is completely up to you. If you are able to drive the survey period fast, it can be 4 weeks, maybe even less. Often it takes a bit longer. That's fine too. So we work together to get those surveys completed. Then we can immediately, after you say you're done, we produce a preliminary report. And while that's been produced, we go do our institutional audit. We check that the data is good. If there's no problem with the data, in about 2 weeks, we give you the final report. And then you can make a decision within 1 month if you want to publish our rating. So you don't have to publish until you're confident with it. Now, it could be that you say, okay, in some employment clusters, I expect it to score higher. That's fine. Then you have our report. You can see areas where you lost points. Maybe we can talk again in a year or 2 years' time, and then we can re-rate you. That's absolutely fine. Now, in the final version, you will get, of course, rating badges, a rating certificate. You get a confidential rating report, which you can publish if you want that. That's up to you. And you get an online rating profile on AppliedHE.com with the official results, a summary of them. Right now, we give you a stakeholder insight report and some online rating results, which are satisfaction scores. So the problem that we have is because of COVID mainly, we haven't been able to rate as many institutions as we'd wanted. So we don't have enough reference data. We've got about 5, 6 institutions rated now. We have about 10 in the pipeline. But we need some more reference data before we can really produce something solid. So these are our satisfaction scores that we publish now. As you can see, they're quite high. This is for an Indonesian university, so very high student satisfaction, alumni satisfaction. So that's already something that you can share, something that you can market, right? Independently verified data. Now I'll talk to you about the online ready presentation, and that is currently and has just gone into pilot. So this presentation is from when it was still a concept a few months ago. Now, why did we want to do this? We basically see a lot of client demand. On the other hand, we see that online learning can be something quite different in different places. Online learning can be that I email you the book and the slides and the lecture notes, and then I do an online exam. There's almost no classroom interaction. There's no small study groups. There's no feedback. So it can be something quite different in different settings. So that's important to realize that online learning is not just one thing. Now, as an institution, doing the online ready rating means that you can benchmark yourself against institutions around the world. It can be used for marketing and branding. So if you remember the triangle picture of Janet's funnel, that's at the top of the triangle. That's kind of the organic search, branding, marketing. That's what this is for. So very useful in that setting, and it's a very good option to show to maybe a student who's not from the Philippines, who's not familiar with your institution. Hey, we are online ready. We offer a very high level of online education, comparable to, say, a top institution in a developed market. And it can also be used for stakeholder engagement to see how your students and faculty really think about what's going on, because they might be more willing to talk to us as an independent third party than to your own internal surveys. Now, for the components, we look at course delivery, including quality. We look at learning support, examination and recognition, and also the quality of the faculty. And these criteria are basically benchmarked against various sources, but including US News Best Online Program Ranking, which is kind of the gold standard, let's say, about online education, which is American, and that's roughly the level that we're looking at. So it's a very solid rating, pardon me. So for course delivery, we look at student interaction, whether there's online projects, course materials are online, if the instructors respond to students, if they have virtual office hours, if students receive training and such things. For learning support, here we go. Whether students are coached in online learning, this is very important. Online success, it doesn't happen automatically. Students need to be well prepared. Students need to be mentored, counseled, also have access to career counseling services, and of course, good technology support. Then for examination and recognition, students should be able to do all coursework online. The exam should be visually proctored by at least 2 cameras. The qualifications and the degree should be equivalent from online and on campus, if that's the case. There has to be an anti-plagiarism. All these things, I mean, it's very thorough evaluation. And then for the faculty, we check that the faculty, they also teach on campus, they've received proper trainings, they're supported by instructional designers, and also student satisfaction. There's different aspects of faculty performance. Now, how do we do this? This is a much simpler evaluation than the job ready one. The job ready is quite substantive. This is is simpler. So there's an institutional survey to find out what are the policies of the institution. Then we run a student survey on a representative sample and a faculty survey. And then together we put together a report. So this is my overview of the ratings. You see my email address. You're very welcome to email me questions or to reply to us later. And now I would like to invite if any of the participants among the panelists want to perhaps make a comment or some questions. I've seen I've seen a question, and that was reposted. Thank you so much. Which is a great one. And perhaps Janet and maybe even myself, I can respond to this. With the explosion of online degrees and innovative edtech platforms from OECD countries, how can host countries or cost-effective destinations in ASEAN regions position their competitive advantages at study destinations to make the region a good spot for international study? Did you get that question, Janet? And do you think you can give us an answer?
I did. I think it's a fantastic question. It really kind of depends whether we are comparing the online offer from a local Philippine institution against the online offer of American institution. I think we've got two very different propositions here, where the advantage of the local provision is it's locally embedded and much nearer to what the local needs are and much nearer to what employers demand from their students. And I think this is an advantage that institutions can really play very well to. And to make the most of that would be perhaps also bring employers' perspective, or bring the employers in as part of that delivery, so that the course is very much tailored to the local labor markets. It's tailored to what the students' environment and what the local community is like, what really moves them, what drives them. But also, I think where the local proposition is unbeatable is possibly the hybrid offer. It's not just reaching online the students, or what is a continuous professional development proposition, because I think in an aging society, we can engage with students differently, and long life learning is a significant aspect to continue education and training outside the classroom and upon students' graduation. We are all facing an aging workforce. I know this is not an issue in the Philippines. It's the most youthful destination country in the whole of the ASEAN. But I think that continuous professional development is an area where much more can be done. It can be done online, it can be done via hybrid means, but also offering students ongoing support through hybrid models, again, offers something that Western universities can't. But if I can be a little bit cheeky and expand my talk here, it's not always about competition. I think there are huge benefits in collaboration. And I think this is why transnational education offers such a fantastic opportunity for universities to build on what they share in common rather than the things that set them apart. And again, working in partnerships, for example, if a Western partner can offer the platform or the know-how of how to teach online, why not build on that and do something together? And then it means building on advantages that two or more universities can bring to the table, rather than doing it all alone. But I think I'll just throw transnational education and joint teaching as part of the mix here. And I'm happy to explore it further if
Yeah, I'd love
it.
that. But let's see if there's because it's a very good question. If there's more questions, is Mandy also on video? Mandy? Okay, I'm sure she'll come on video in a second. The second question that was asked here was about a lack of national strategic policy for university rankings and ratings. what do you think are other sources of ranking frustration among Philippine higher education institutions? Is that something about ranking and rating frustration? Is that something that Mandy wants to speak to?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What are possible sources of ranking and rating frustration for higher education institutions in the Philippines? I think it's almost the other way around. That's what we want to ask you and see how AppliedHE can help you solve them. So maybe let's go for that comment, Mandy.
Well, as you know, the other rankings out there, most of them are for the world, so it is rather difficult for universities from the Philippines or Vietnam or from the ASEAN region to really make a significant show on those kind of world university rankings. And also for the Asian rankings, if you want to argue that point, you are also competing with North Asia, pick the likes of China, Japan, Korea. So a lot of good universities in Philippines are greatly overlooked. However, when we are coming in, we want to include everybody. There are no good bad universities, just different.
Okay, thank you so much for that comment. There's another question here about digital inclusion and how do you engage with students with diverse disabilities? I think that's an absolutely excellent question. I'm not sure who can speak to it well enough, but I think it's very good that's been raised. What I can say is it is part of AppliedHE's job ready rating, and you could argue it should actually be part of all ratings, that this is kind of a minimum thing that you need to do to comply. That's what I can think of. So I think it's a really good thing to raise. Janet, you're nodding. Do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Richard, for another excellent question there. I think that many universities are well versed in dealing with diversity and inclusion, and many are well trained in leaving nobody behind in that space. I think the whole digital inclusion is probably more about affordability and economic means to access such kind of education, having the right device, but also having the right support in place, and choosing an institution that caters to the specific needs of the students. I think that current software development and course offering has actually accommodated it's not just like special education needs, caters to students with very diverse special education needs. And it is part of the access agreements that I believe many of the institutions, I can only speak for those in the UK, they have to comply with. And as such, this should not be an issue. I would have thought the real problem in terms of digital access, I think, is students having the right equipment and having the means to access the teaching. Once they've got the access, it's the institution that has to absolutely ensure that everybody's needs are well catered for. And if they don't, they can always partner up with institutions that have a wealth of experience in the development of such course materials. And also in terms of dealing with students that have wide range of special education needs or disabilities.
I think that's a nice point to hook onto partnerships, also in transnational education, as you mentioned before. Perhaps you can share some practical points. I mean, let's say, okay, I'm an institution. I realize that I want to do an online degree, but I need support in certain content areas, perhaps also to reach students with disabilities. Where do I go? Who do I approach? Because some institutions you approach about transnational education say, "Oh, that's wonderful. Let's start with $100,000 consulting program, and then you can come have your say." Well, what is the way to go about this? Perhaps Janet first, and then Mandy, we can go maybe a little bit about the value of networking and so on.
I think the world is your oyster, really, in that space. And what the pandemic has done is pushing everybody's online. So there is quite a diverse and wide choice. A program which I was personally involved in, and I feel slightly biased in my answer because there was a program that was run jointly by the British Council and the Philippines Commission for CHED, for Higher Education Department, is on development of niche programs in the Philippines. So the development of programs that are not existing in the country was the core focus of the program. And as such, I think about 10 new partnerships were forged. But the Commission on Higher Education was very heavily involved in the process in terms of guiding the Philippines institutions in that process. The British Council, on the other hand, was involved in terms of selecting the best UK universities that had know-how in those particular niche subjects on one hand, but on the other hand, also had vast experience in the development of such partnerships. So the focus of the program was, on one hand, developing local capacity in areas that were not currently taught, on one hand, and on the other, training faculty on how to engage in transnational education partnerships. So there were kind of two aspects attached to it. So I suppose that possibly one of the points of contact can be just do some due diligence and working other countries' agencies like the DAD, like the British Council, and NAFEC from the Netherlands and others, may be a good starting point in terms of finding a particular partner in the country, or they will ensure they'll help you out. I think it's also fair to say that many of those agencies, they are aid organizations and they're publicly funded. As such, there may be some commercial aspect in terms of cost recovery, but I think it's fair to say that they will genuinely help you to find a good partner overseas. I think Austrade is another department that is engaged in that space, and possibly Enterprise Ireland. I can't name all of them.
Yeah,
but,
many countries have an agency that deals with this. Yeah, that's right. Mandy, perhaps you want to say a little bit about the services that AppliedHE offers for this kind of networking, benefits of engaging in events and so on, news, whatnot.
Yeah, as you know, it's not what you know, but who you know. So networking has a lot of opportunities. So we have on the online space, we have the alumni engagement and management. And as mentioned just now, most Asian universities either neglect this side of things or they're not very good at it. So now with this service from Future on our website, you can really make meaningful connections and with your alumni from many years ago, if you like. And also, bite-sized internship create many opportunities for networking for the three important stakeholders: the students, the uni, and the industry. And particularly for students, I think it is really encouraging for them to start making a global network, connecting with global peers even before they graduate. And of course, our events, the virtual and physical, these are very good platforms for networking. And networking does bring a lot of benefits. It could be student recruitment, student mobility, research collaboration, exchanges, etc., etc. So AppliedHE, in a nutshell, offers all these services. So just put it there.
Great, great. Thank you so much for those comments and advice. If are there any further questions about our rating system or things like that? Perhaps I can comment a little bit on that. I think the ratings is something that an institution can start with right away, and it's kind of a quality benchmark, right? I think especially if you're venturing overseas, you don't necessarily know an institution, but if it has some kind of rating, ranking for better or worse, that is what people tend to follow. And I think that's in an internationalization strategy where the AppliedHE ratings come in. Because they are fully online, it's a rating that can be done now, right? I'm not quite sure what the situation is in the Philippines, but here in Malaysia, everything is locked down again. But the rating exercise, etc., can happen right away. And as Dr. Janet mentioned, a lot of the networking can happen online right away too. So it's not something that you have to wait for post-COVID. It is something that can happen right now. Then, as I don't see further, here's a question. Or a comment, I think. ASEAN has over 50, this is from Richard Arseno again. Thank you so much for your comments, Richard. ASEAN has over 50 million persons with disabilities and less than 5% pursued higher education due to several physical and institutional barriers. And hope AppliedHE can do that. Yeah, no, I think that's a very good point. And to be very honest, is something that we haven't looked at as much yet. But this is why events like this one are so useful. Then we can hear points, things that you are concerned about as higher education leaders. Yeah, so if there are not, Mandy wants to say something. Yes, Mandy, go ahead. Then we slowly move towards closing comments. Yes, Mandy, go ahead.
I've got a question in the chat box. Someone is asking how to make the region a good spot for international study. And I think by driving the preferred rankings is a good way to promote the country, which in turn will filter down to employability. So therefore, this is an attractive component to boost international study. As you know, the preferred rankings is designed to stimulate collaboration between the academic and business community to help bridge the national skills gap. And when companies and universities are competing locally, this is all very local, it will help to attract and nurture the nation's best talent. Thank you.
Okay. And Janet, did you want to make some comments?
Yes, I would love to. Thank you. I would love to just elaborate a little bit on what Mandish just said, because league tables and rankings have become quite unnecessary in terms of necessary evil, if I can refer to them as such, because scholarship agencies use them, policymakers use them, students use them, universities use them when they choose their partners. They have become necessary. Whether we love them or we hate them, we just have to live with them, because that's the nature of things. But I also think that if institutions are serious about making a bold statement that they want to educate, they want to engage with student audiences from all over the world, then there is definitely a need to put pressure on the national agencies, on their policymakers in terms of putting out a strong brand that talks to international students. I really don't think international students think of the Philippines as an English-speaking study destination. And it is. I mean, name a country which is not the traditional English-speaking destination set like UK, Australia, US and Canada and Ireland. A country outside those, the English-speaking destination set, that knows that actually that Philippines is English-speaking country where universities actually teach, they instruct their students through the medium of the English language. It just seems that a campaign, a national campaign, strong marketing campaign that sends this message internationally is required just to raise the profile in the region, but not just in the region, perhaps globally as well. And it's really difficult to penetrate that space at an institutional basis. Because unless you're in the top 5 or the top 10, to make yourself visible, but then the benefits are to the respective institution. But if you want the benefits to be shared across the sector, I think a unified front is required. So if the government doesn't listen, possibly association of universities can go ahead and develop a national brand or their institutional grouping brand as such. But I think a very strong and loud message in that space is required. And a unified front can support that.
Thank you very much, Janet, for that call to action. And I think it's one that AppliedHE completely agrees with, right? That yes, we are here to help communicating that excellence, whether it's through a rating, a ranking, better communications, more webinars like this one, etc. We are very excited to be a partner in all these situations. Now I think we're running very well according to the clock. Let's move to Dr. Heraclio de la Grada, who is the Vice President for Academic Affairs at Our Lady of Fatima University, who has graciously agreed to deliver some closing comments. Go ahead, Dr.
Thank you, Peter. Good afternoon, everyone, and warm greetings from the Our Lady of Fatima University. Tagged as the new kid on the block, we welcome Singapore-based AppliedHE to the Philippines in its launch program today in partnership with the Our Lady of Fatima University, one of the few private universities granted autonomous status by the Philippine Commission on Higher Education. Indeed, a new kid in town, full of potential, founded in Singapore in January 2020 by veterans from the QS Asia office. AppliedHE Xchange is a globally oriented higher education evaluation and branding company that is rooted in Asia and very Asia. Barely a year old, it has already located itself in China, Malaysia, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, Pakistan, South Africa, Sri Lanka, Taiwan, the United Kingdom, and now the Philippines to pursue its mission of empowering higher education providers by delivering suitable and globally recognized evaluation tools, a portfolio of industry-leading marketing and branding services, and a platform for stakeholder networking that enables them to excel and amplify their impact locally and worldwide. We thank its founder and CEO, Ms. Mandy Mok, for bringing AppliedHE to the Philippines and choosing Our Lady of Fatima University as its hosting partner. We look forward to more fruitful undertakings of AppliedHE in higher education in the Philippines. We also thank Dr. Janet Leva, founder and CEO of Education Insight UK, for her sharing on higher education engagement, post-COVID global student mobility, transnational education, and changing student recruitment ecosystems. Dr. Leva is an advisor to the Philippines UK Transnational Education Program, run by the British Council and the Commission on Higher Education of the Philippines. We likewise thank Mr. Peter Steck, Chief Analyst of AppliedHE, for his talk on AppliedHE ratings like Job Ready, English Ready, and Online Ready. Like Ms. Mandy Mok, he was formally connected with QS Asia office. The Our Lady of Fatima University would also like to express its appreciation and gratitude to all of you who participated in this webinar and launch program. We appreciate your joining us and in helping us welcome AppliedHE, the new kid on the block. Thank you, everyone, and mabuhay.
Okay, thank you so much. Then if there's nothing else, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending. We will be in touch via email and other AppliedHE platforms, and see you again in future. Bye-bye. Have a very good day.
Thank you.